The story begins with my wife and I being happily married. We have two wonderful daughters aged 13 and 10 years old, and we have what I consider to be a fairly healthy relationship, but at some point our relationship started to get weird. She became overly reliant on her cell phone, deleting passwords saved on our shared computer, and hanging up abruptly when I entered the house or room. One day when my wife told me she was going to be with the girls, I decided to follow her as I wished. I thought about retaliating. Various scenarios came to mind as I aggressively confronted Peter, but I ultimately opted for a more civilized and legal approach, but just barely. So the first step in my plan was to gather evidence. Instead of hiring a private investigator, I came up with a much better idea, and while my wife was at work and the kids were at school, I set up some small hidden cameras and microphones. Due to the layout of our bedroom, I even managed to install a perfectly good hidden camera and microphone above the bed, but I made sure I didn't use them when I was home. It's worth noting that due to her demanding and often exhausting job and our varied interests and talents, I've been the primary caregiver, taking on the role of cooking and taking a more active role in raising my daughters, giving them a lot of patience and attention, but not spoiling them, so it's not uncommon for me to take my daughters on trips on my own. Over the next 2 weeks, I got everything organized and contacted an attorney to draft a separation agreement that would allow me to gain custody. Finally, I went on a trip, trying not to reveal anything to my daughters, waiting to see if Peter and my wife would fall into a trap. But to make matters worse, they discussed some very hurtful things about me in their conversations in addition to my physical condition and how I couldn't satisfy her, such as the fact that she shared some of my deepest secrets and shameful stories with Peter. The day before the kids left, I determined what I needed to do, but before my wife left I confronted her with the video evidence and gave her an ultimatum that either she would sign a separation agreement and leave the house or the kids would receive a detailed explanation of all the details of the infidelity. I want to make it clear that I didn't intend to actually carry out the threat. I love my daughters too much to put them through this, but I did put her under pressure by bluffing. She was too emotional to see through this. She went through all the stages of denial, of trying to negotiate, threatening, and being angry, and I made her go through all of it, and eventually she signed the separation agreement. Later that night she said goodbye to her daughters and left. I didn't show or tell my daughters any explicit details. I've always been honest with them, and that's what made me their favorite parent, so I just told them that mommy was unfaithful to them. But what I didn't expect was for her to use her visitation rights to say bad things about me. Basically, she started telling my youngest daughter that it was all my fault because I hadn't forgiven her. Her lawyers even started demanding that she get custody even though she couldn't get the money or the house because she was caught cheating on me, which is important in divorce proceedings in our state. So I finally put my revenge plan into action and I decided to take a trip to South Carolina. And why South Carolina? Because I really wanted my daughters to see Sutter's Fort. There I could upload my wife's adulterous affair with Peter to the famous X site and other similar sites without being prosecuted because it was not illegal when or where these acts took place. I felt bad for his wife because she was the innocent victim in all of this, but I think she found out better because for my wife it was the end of any chance of getting custody and she was quickly fired from the job she had done for 8 years. And while the Revenge X video part was a despicable move, it could not be prosecuted in South Carolina, so it only had to be done in a court of law that would have had a characterizing negatively impacted. I didn't get alimony, but I made enough money to support me and the kids that I could handle a full-time job while taking care of the kids. A few months later my wife was still unemployed, but I don't know if it was because of her movie or the virus. The daughters were growing up well and they didn't seem to mind not seeing their mother. She told me how I ruined her life and her relationship with her daughters, but honestly, I think she deserved it. Story 2. I am a 40-year-old woman and my husband is 42 years old. We got married when I was 22 and he was 23 years old, and so far our marriage has been good. We have a 12-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. But lately I have had a strange feeling that my husband may be in love with my sister who is 43 years old, and she has never liked me. Even though she was our parents' favorite person when we were growing up, she has always held a grudge against me and has always taken away the things that I like. For example, when I was younger I loved playing soccer and was very good at it. She told our parents, who believed her because she was their favorite, and as a result, they banned me from playing soccer anymore, even though it wasn't my fault. Plus she took my first boyfriend and bullied me at school, but I didn't say anything about it, and kept to myself most of the time. Aged 2 months ago, our 12-year-old daughter broke her arm, and my husband and I went with her to the hospital while our son was at his friend's house. When we got home, our daughter asked me if she could have McDonald's, so I went out and got it for her because she was craving it. When I got home with the food, I saw my husband leaving with our daughter, who was crying and pleading with him to stay. I rushed over to him and asked what happened, and he told me he was going to my sister's because she wasn't feeling well. This made me very angry, so I packed my bags for myself, my daughter and my son, and we went to my aunt's house. My aunt was the only family member who agreed that my sister was difficult, so I spent most of my childhood with my aunt. As soon as they saw me, they hurriedly got dressed, and my husband rushed to me, insisting that things were not what they seemed and that this was a big misunderstanding. I screamed that I wanted a divorce and left. When I got to my aunt's house, I went straight to the room I was staying in and couldn't hold back the tears any longer. I felt so lost and didn't know what to do next. Even though I begged my aunt not to tell me, she had already told our parents and many of our family members. My husband and sister texted me a lot, but I ignored them all. I don't really know how to break the news to my children. I explained to my kids that work wasn't going well and that's why I was sad, and they believed me because I still couldn't bear to tell them about their father. I'm sorry, but it's true. I got divorced because she had been offending him mentally throughout the relationship and recently escalated to physical offense. I got in touch with her ex-husband and had a conversation and asked him if he wanted to retaliate, which he agreed to, so we arranged to meet at a public cafe, and during our conversation we discussed her offending behavior and how he suspected she had feelings for my husband. The police said they would continue to investigate the case and advised us to hire an attorney before sending us home. I then took all the money out of our joint account and transferred it to my own account since the house was mine. A few days later, I sat my kids down and shared everything with them. My son was very angry, but my daughter didn't believe me at all and she accused me of lying. I had absolutely no idea this was going to happen. As it turns out, my aunt was on the verge of a breakdown with my sister and she decided to come clean to the whole family about what I had seen. She also revealed that my sister had been in and out of jail, and each time my aunt had bailed her out. Regarding my husband's parents, they expressed disbelief, saying they never thought he would fall so far, especially considering that his mother raised him as a single mom before she met his stepfather, whom he calls his dad. She ran upstairs to the room she shared with her brother at her aunt's house and slammed the door behind her as my son gave his dad a disappointed look before following his sister up the stairs. He began sobbing and pleading that he had nowhere else to go and that his parents had made it clear that he was not welcome back there. I remained firm in my desire for a divorce, and eventually he agreed and left in tears. 2 days later, I returned home with my children who hadn't been to school since our conversation and found it difficult, especially my daughters. I sat them down and hugged them and assured them that we would be strong and that no matter what happened we would get through it together, and I promised I would always be there for them. They both cried and we just cried until they fell asleep. Then I woke them up and took them to bed and went downstairs and I broke down myself. I thought it was my ex-husband, but it turned out to be my sister's ex-husband. He hugged me and comforted me as I cried and expressed how overwhelmed I was with dealing with everything on my own. He spent the night at my house, and when I woke up he had made breakfast for me and the kids, and they seemed to enjoy his company. He asked them if they wanted to go somewhere special and they weren't sure, but he convinced them and they eventually agreed. I thanked him warmly and hugged him for his brightness. I noticed that Thomas had ordered their favorite takeout and was sitting on the couch eating it while my daughter snuggled up next to him, her eyes red from crying. Afterward, I talked to the kids and we agreed to start seeing a therapist, which Thomas was supportive of and encouraged them to try since he was already seeing a therapist himself. My husband has been bombarding my cell phone with texts and calls, but I decided to block him, and this is the latest. I'll let everyone know if anything changes. Since then my kids have never spoken to their dad and I have cut off contact with my parents. I don't blame her and I never will. It breaks my heart to see her in so much pain. All she wants is for us to be reunited as a family, but I know that's not going to happen because the damage has already been done. Sometimes she gets so emotionally out of control that she seems disconnected from what's going on around her, and occasionally she slips up and calls Papa Thomas, which isn't a bad thing. But I would never date my sister's ex. no matter how bad she is. It's the only way I can really understand how he feels because he rarely communicates with me no matter how hard I try. As for my ex-husband, he is completely cut off from my sister and hasn't spoken to her since he got a high-paying job. My daughter tells me all this, but I never pressure her to let me know what is going on in his life. My ex has been trying to reach out to me, sending me flowers and gifts, which I have accepted because I don't want to waste it. I still love him despite everything that has happened, and from what I have heard, it's not going to be easy to let go of this relationship. I want to make it clear that if she was homeless I would help her because I couldn't stand to see her on the streets, especially knowing how dangerous our town is at night. Thomas has been a strong support for all of us. He's been great in every way. Another thing about Thomas is that he found out he was bisexual and started dating a guy named Logan not too long ago. Logan has been a great help to him as well. My kids love them both. My son is very much in love with them, and my daughter is closer to them every day. I'm not saying I'm going to start dating him, but he brings me so much joy. I haven't told my kids about him yet, and that's it for now. If anything else happens, I'll keep you guys posted. Thank you for all your love and support. It means the world to me, and I love you all so much. Thomas came up with a great idea. He suggested that I donate my gifts to a women's shelter or orphanage. He usually gives me flowers, teddy bears, or jewelry, but I don't use any of them, so I'll give them to someone who might like them. I would only help her if my parents stayed out of it. I know what she did was wrong, but I can't stand by and watch her get hurt or be in danger. Ed, don't worry, I would never let that horrible person near my children, especially Thomas, and I'm not going to traumatize anyone around me any more than I have to about my ex-husband. We have no future together, and I'm determined to make sure that he understands that someone mentioned that my daughter might say something to her father, say something, and I hope she will. I want him to know how much better off we'll be without him. So we don't need his help and we don't need his stinking money. That's all there is to it. Have a great day and thank you again for your support. You don't know how much you've helped me. Story number 3. We've got another great story to tell. I grew up with a single mom because my dad died when I was 2 years old, and for most of my life I focused on my I was focused on my career, and my mom was supportive of my career. But at the age of 20 I met my ex-girlfriend and we started dating. At first we were co-workers, but she said she would soon be working in another department. Then she met another man at her new workplace and claimed to be in love with him while still being in a relationship with me. A few hours later my mom called me and started yelling that she didn't teach me to do this. She told me that my ex-girlfriend had accused me of cheating on her and claimed to have proof on my cell phone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I tried to explain to my mom that the opposite was true, that she was the one who cheated on me, but she didn't believe me. However, my mother called me a liar and threatened to disinherit me. She didn't want me to have a cheating son. She said she never wanted to see me again, and then my grandparents called me and expressed their disappointment in me and said that I deserved anything bad that happened to me. This has caused me a lot of pain. The only person on my side was my best friend, who was very angry with my ex-girlfriend. I talked to him and he hugged me and I cried in his arms. I know some people might find it unusual for two men to do that, but his support helped me tremendously through this difficult time. A year later, just when I thought I had come out of it, the doorbell rang and I opened the door to find my mom with tears in her eyes. She said she wanted to talk to me, that she was sorry, and after she begged for 15 minutes straight, I finally relented and opened the door again, where she told me that my ex-husband had admitted to cheating on her while she was drunk. She has called me every day for the past few months saying she just wants to hear my voice. She says she misses me and apologizes again and asks if I can come over. Her voice always sounds pained and she constantly expresses her love for me. I appreciate her efforts, but I can't forgive her or even see her right now. I hope she understands that I need time to heal and process everything. I texted her and without hesitation she showed up on my doorstep within 15 minutes. Many of you have made good points about what I should have asked her, and that although she has called me several times, we rarely have a proper conversation. She also assured me that I was still in her will, and then she started talking bad about my ex-husband, claiming that when she found out that my ex-husband was having an affair, she punched her so hard that my ex-husband lost a few teeth. I had a hard time believing this detail, but I thought it sounded funny. Nonetheless, she said she told my ex to fuck off and kicked her out of the house. She started apologizing again and said that she knew she had screwed up and that she understood that I would probably never trust her again, but that she was determined to do everything she could to make things right. She revealed that her past experiences with infidelity made this a sensitive subject for her and admitted that she regretted not believing me or listening to my side of the story. She assured me that she would reassure me, but I replied that her assurances meant nothing because I didn't trust her to begin with. She started to tear up and kept trying to hold back her tears, but eventually she couldn't hold back and broke down and cried, her voice whimpering, and she asked me if I could at least give her a hug, to which I agreed, and she promised to make things right before she left, no matter what it took. When she broke down, I saw my own mother crying on the floor and I felt nothing. I wasn't sad, angry or happy. I couldn't show her any sympathy. It was too much for me. When I moved into my new apartment last month, she immediately agreed to help. She even canceled important work appointments to be with me. She called almost every day to check up on me and even brought me lunch at my work. She also talked to my grandparents and they apologized, but I didn't really care for them, and even after the truth came out they were still upset. Today was a big day for me and I hope I made the right decision. My mom comes to visit me almost every day after work and shares her day with me and asks about mine. Today we really had a good time. We watched a movie together and she cooked for me. All in all, it was a great day. I can't deny that every day she hugs me goodbye when she leaves, but I've never hugged her back. I'm still cautious. At first she looked surprised, but within seconds she was in tears and hugging me and thanking me. She assured me that she would always be there for me and promised to call me tomorrow. I'm not exaggerating at all when I say that the whole thing was like a scene from a dramatic movie, but I can live with it. Yes, she made a horrible mistake, but I can't hold on to that kind of unforgiveness forever, especially after seeing how hard she's worked to repair our relationship.